Welcome to intensified after the U.S. lost its pristine sovereign credit rating due to rising debt and interest payments. Moody's has reduced the credit rating for the U.S. from AAA to AA1, which is held by countries like Austria and Finland. The downgrade means all three major credit rating agencies have stripped the U.S. off its best rating. Fitch cut in 2023 due to fiscal concerns, while Standard & Poor's downgraded in 2011 due to the debt ceiling crisis. Moody's said successive U.S. administrations have failed to rein in debt as annual fiscal deficits and interest costs continued to expand. The move comes as the House debates on a new tax bill. According to experts, bond investors will be keeping a sharp eye on Congress to be more fiscally responsible, or else they will punish bad policy by making it expensive for governments to borrow. After Walmart announced plans to raise prices due to the levies, U.S. President Donald Trump tells the retailer to quote-unquote eat the tariffs. Trump is working to keep prices down as he imposes a wave of tariffs on imported goods. But after Walmart said it cannot absorb the high tariff costs due to narrow retail margins, the president told the retail giant on Truth Social to stop blaming the import taxes. He said the chain could afford to absorb the costs without passing them on to consumers. More than 250 million people shop in Walmart stores or place orders on its website around the world. Walmart's disclosure comes nearly a month after Amazon announced plans to disclose how much Trump-imposed tariffs were adding to the costs of its products, which prompted criticisms from the White House. U.S. markets have capped Friday's session with gains. The Dow rose by over 0.75%, S&P 500 up by 0.7%, and the Nasdaq climbed by over 0.5%. And taking a look at the benchmark 10-year Treasury yields, they've inched down slightly at 4.437%, while gold prices have settled last Friday to $3,182 per troy ounce. Moody's downgrade of Washington's credit rating pushes stock futures toward a decline. Let's take a look at how the futures markets are trading. The Dow falling by 0.6%, S&P 500 by about 0.1%, and the Nasdaq slides by over 1%. U.S. markets open later tonight, Manila time. Let's take a look at the Asian markets. Looking like they're hit by the downgrade. The sentiment are all around that, quite negative, with the ASX 200 down about 0.1%, Kospi index down about 0.5%, and Japan's Nikkei 225 declines by over 0.5% as well. Back here at home, taking a quick check on the markets, the Philippine Stock Exchange opens this Monday higher by over 0.25% at 6,482. Stock market closed last Friday slightly lower by less than 0.1%. Let's take a look at the Philippine peso. It looks like it opened slightly weaker to 58 or 55.82 the dollar. The peso closed Friday slightly stronger at 55.653 against the greenback. Performance of GT Capital Holdings' core operating companies boosted earnings in the first quarter. The T family's investment arm reported a core net income of 8.7 billion pesos in the first quarter, marking a year-on-year growth of 27%. Consolidated net income jumped by 29% year-on-year to 9.14 billion pesos. On the technical chart, GT Capital Holdings Incorporated rallying streak right now after hitting a new 18-month low of 465 pesos last month. However, says Ron Acoba of Trading Edge, the stock's rebound may face resistance around the 560 peso mark, which previously acted as a support level. So for GT Cap to break out of its medium-term downtrend, it needs to establish a new base and convincingly move above 560 per share. With us now for more is George Oitioco Jr., the Chief Financial Officer and Treasurer of GT Capital Holdings Incorporated. Good to have you here, George. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yes, that happened on a day that the Moodys had downgraded America's credit ratings, and the impact we're seeing in Asia for the first time. What sort of an impact, though, might it have on sovereigns that hold treasuries and also corporates who hold dollar-denominated debt?
You think about it. The typical reaction of markets when there's a downgrade in ratings is typically to have an increase in the cost of borrowing. So that typically results in a lowering of the debt itself, the value of the debt itself. Whether that's going to have a full impact on something like the credit of the U.S. or not, I think still remains to be seen. Maybe it may mean slightly higher rates, but again, it remains to be seen. Primarily because the U.S. is still a major force in the world in terms of its dollar, the strength of the dollar in trade and international commerce. So we'll see. We'll see what happens, and I guess, like they say, just don't change this channel.
Yeah, but for corporates though holding dollar-denominated debt, would that be a concern when you think about those listed here in the Philippine Stock Exchange?
I can't speak for the others. We ourselves don't hold dollar-denominated debt, but I think where we would be more concerned about if we had any dollar holdings is on the FX exchange, on the exchange rate. Typically, movements in interest rates may have an impact on exchange rates, and that's something that we would watch out for very carefully. But like I said, we ourselves do not hold any dollar debt, nor do we have any positions in U.S. dollar. So to us, it's very, very minimal, practically no impact to us.
But you have them in pesos and some of them in Japanese yen.
Yeah. Right now, pretty much, I'd say 90% of our debt is in pesos. There's a portion that is in Japanese yen, and that was taken out to purchase a Japanese investment that we made a few years ago in Toyota Motors Corporation. So that one is fully hedged. So in that sense, there's little to no impact to us. If there's any impact, it's going to be on the FX and how it impacts the cost of importing vehicles for Toyota, which are typically denominated in U.S. dollars.
Right. So what would that mean then if we're at, your forecast for the Philippine peso at 55 perhaps? What are you forecasting and how are you hedging against it?
We ourselves rely on bank forecasts and our banks that to determine where the FX is going to be. I think latest indications, before everything that happened at the start of this year, indications were the exchange rate was going to be in the 58, 59 range. I think a number of banks have adjusted their forecasts for the FX rate, so we expect that that's going to be probably somewhere in the 56, 57 range. For us, where the cost of vehicles that come in are denominated in U.S. dollars, a stronger peso actually is favorable to us. But we also don't want it to be too strong, in which case, then it can go easily the other way the following year.
Let's talk about your CapEx. You've earlier announced 26.9 billion. That's an earlier figure, and that is excluding the 11.5 billion that you're setting aside for new pursuits. How are you going to raise that CapEx, and what are you going to do with it?
Well, right now, we're in a very fortunate position where our key businesses, namely Metrobank, Toyota, and Metro Pacific, are actually generating a lot of profits and generating a lot of cash for us. And as a result, in the last 2 years, 3 years, we've actually enjoyed a very strong net positive cash flow coming into our businesses. In the last 5 years, what we've done with that is mostly pay down debt. especially as we saw a rising interest rate environment. You know, just the cost of refinancing the debt didn't make any sense. So what we are now in a position where we can look to invest in new businesses and new industries, and that's something that we're looking at and looking forward to. But it's not easy to find an attractive sector or an attractive company that actually will move the needle for a conglomerate as large as
What
ours.
are the metrics, though? I mean, if you're going to be sector specific, what would make sense in the order of what is attractive in your description?
When we look at investments, we're looking for something that matches our minimum internal hurdle rates, and that would be something that can give us returns in like the mid double-digit returns, mid-teens, preferably higher teens if we can. Something that is relatively resilient to economic shocks, and something that, or sectors that are sectors that are needed by people in general. We're primarily a consumption economy, so we're looking for sectors that most people here in the Philippines look for, and at the same time are relatively fragmented, so that it's not, you know, you don't have to compete against a major entrenched player to be able to make a dent in that particular industry.
So could we cross out highly regulated?
We try to manage our exposure to highly regulated industries. Right now, we have an investment in Metro Pacific Investments Corporation, and that is in a number of highly regulated industries. But directly, I think we're comfortable where we are right now. We try to avoid anything that is highly regulated at this point in time.
All right, so you haven't got a decision yet, but it's consumption-based.
Yeah, not a decision yet. If you know, in the last few years, a sector that has really increased in terms of visibility is healthcare. The COVID pandemic basically has raised people's awareness about the need for healthcare, and from our perspective, we feel that there's still an opportunity to play a role there. It's just that we have to find the right way to enter that particular sector. The other sector that we know is in great demand and is really energy, because we have a growing economy. First quarter, we grew at 5.4%. Last year, we were at 5.8%. When you have an economy that's growing as fast as ours is, you know, the demands for energy is going to be very, very high. So that's another sector we think could be an interesting area to invest in. But like I said, it's always a question of finding the right opportunity, the right platform, the right partner to enter into that sector with, that will give us the kind of returns that we're looking for.
In the meantime, your auto and your banking business are doing all right. They're performing well, but then they're also exposed to the global policy uncertainties because of the Trump tariffs.
Sure.
Autos, for one, is also facing a lot of competition from Chinese car makers, BYD, trumping the Japanese automakers, not just Toyota, but for the rest of the Japanese rivals. How are you taking this on with BYD partnering with Ayala, and also the demand for consumers' need for environment-friendly vehicles are rising?
Well, we actually welcome the entry of a player like BYD because it's a sign that the market as a whole is growing and growing very fast, and there's going to be an increasing demand for a wide variety of products. Toyota itself, in the first quarter of this year, we grew by about 12%, no? Compared year on year, which is faster than the industry as a whole. If you look at the CAMPI figures, the industry grew about 6.6% in the first quarter. If you add informal estimates of what BYD numbers were, that's probably closer to 10. But the fact that we're still able to grow at the same pace or faster than the industry, I think is a good sign as far as Toyota is concerned. It shows that we have the right product mix that people are looking for, and we cater to a broader range of consumers across the different sectors. No? As far as electric vehicles are concerned, definitely, I think we see the rise of electrified vehicles. But in a country like the Philippines, we believe that hybrids are probably going to take the center stage compared to pure electric vehicles. And the numbers show that. This year alone, the growth in electric vehicle sales is like something in the neighborhood of like 120%, somewhere in that neighborhood. In our particular case, we're up about 7% of our total vehicle sales are hybrid vehicles. But in a market like the Philippines, where you don't have the charging infrastructure, which is very costly to make, we believe that hybrid vehicles are probably going to lead the way insofar as electrification is concerned.
We got about 2 minutes to go. I know property's looking really interesting. Question is, are you land banking? And if so, for which purpose? Is it going to be office, residential, retail, mall, or hotels?
Well, right
Given
now,
the condo oversupply that we're seeing in NCR.
yeah, right now we actually have about 700 plus hectares of land in our inventory that we have in our land bank. Most of it is located in Cavite with our development in River Park. And that is an area of focus that our property businesses have decided to pivot to and shift to look at horizontal developments, standalone individual home units, as opposed to vertical, which had been traditionally our strength. We think that that's where the market is going. We can see it from the sales that we've recognized. Definitely, that's going to be a sector of focus. Hotels, not really, not necessarily. We do have a very strong hotel with the Grand Hyatt in BGC. But if we're going to set up another, it's a question of location and finding the right place and the right market to be able to set up another.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Wide-ranging conversation there in 10 minutes, George. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
George Oitioko of GT Capital Holdings there. And you're watching Money Talks. Coming right up, Metro Pacific Tollway says it is ready to resume merger talks with San Miguel Corporation. And Maynilad reduces the size of its planned initial public offering, with its listing now scheduled for July 17th. Keep it here on One News. Welcome back to Money Talks. I'm Cathy Yang. The non-performing loan ratio of Philippine banks have eased to a 3-month low in March as total loans outpaced the increase in bad debts. That's according to the data from the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. The ratio hit 3.3% from 3.38 in February, marking the lowest NPL for the country's banking sector since December. The Bangko Sentral says this reflects improved asset quality amid steady economic activity. NPLs refer to credit obligations that have not been repaid for at least 90 days past its due date. These loans are considered high-risk assets, signaling a borrower's weakened capacity or willingness to repay. The Philippines is set to formally submit its application to join the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, or CPTPP, within the first semester. That's according to the Department of Trade and Industry. Trade Secretary Cristina Roque met with Chilean Vice Minister of Trade Claudia Sanhueza on the sidelines of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Ministers responsible for trade meeting on Jeju on May 15th. The Trade Department said the plan is to submit the formal application within the first half of the year. The CPTPP, which sets high standards in trade, is composed of 12 countries, including Australia, Chile, Japan, and the UK. Metro Pacific Tollways Corporation says it is ready to resume merger talks with San Miguel Corporation after deferring discussions amid fundraising activities. MPTC Chairman Manuel V. Pangilinan says they would like to engage with SMC as companies have reported first quarter results, adding that SMC is quote-unquote doing very well. MPTC said earlier that its planned tollway merger with SMC has no definite completion date yet, but intends to finalize the deal this year. The tollway arm of Metro Pacific Investments Corporation said the company aims for a 50-50 split in the planned merger, with SMC describing it as the ideal structure for the joint venture. Maynilad Water Services, Inc. has reduced the size of its planned initial public offering, with listing now scheduled for July 17th. Based on its latest announcement draft dated May 14th, Maynilad's IPO is now expected to raise up to 45 billion pesos, slightly lower than the 49 billion pesos indicated in its initial announcement. The revised IPO comprises up to 2.3 billion common shares, lower than the earlier maximum of 2.46 billion shares. This offering is also smaller than the country's largest IPO to date, the 48.6 billion peso market debut of Monde Nissin Corporation. Maynilad's market debut is one of 6 IPOs anticipated this year. However, the Philippine Stock Exchange has so far recorded only one, the April offering of Cebu-based fuel retailer Topline Business Development Corp. May 18th is the International Day of Women in Maritime, and this year's theme is on navigating an ocean of opportunities. Survey findings of the 2024 International Maritime Organization and the Women's International Shipping and Trading Association reveal at sea, women remain vastly underrepresented, according to 1% of the total number of seafarers employed by surveyed organizations. The survey builds on the first report published in 2022, which indicated significant disparities between men and women in all levels of the maritime workforce, with great variations among individual subsectors. Well, here to talk to us about life at sea is a Filipino seafarer, second officer at Global Ship Management Company OSM TOM, Maribel Villar Singyan. So good to see you, Maribel. Welcome to the program.
Good morning, Mom. Thanks for having us.
All right, so you're onshore today. You're not at sea, is that right?
That's correct, Mom.
Okay, so the latest survey says that women at sea remain vastly underrepresented. Do you feel that way where you are?
That's true, Mom. At present, the female in the maritime composed only of 1.2%. So it is not a surprise that I am often on board as the only female working with 23 other men on board ships, Mom.
Right, you'll never be missed. I know you've got a strong academic foundation. You're class valedictorian, and you got to be a cadet and scholar of the Norwegian Ship Owners Association. Did you always want to become a seafarer?
Initially, Mom, I wanted to become a doctor, but poverty and the length of time to pursue medicine makes me to reconsider. That's when I set my sight on becoming a seafarer because I wanted to give my family the life they deserve. And I am very much grateful, ma'am, to Norwegian Ship Owners Association Cadetship Program because they are the one who sponsor my college. Tuition, food, quality training, and a guaranteed employment right after graduation.
Curious to know, Maribel, what do you do as second officer? I'm thinking real challenging tasks like tightening the lashing gears and the containers to keep them safe in rough seas. I mean, working with the cranes and mooring, among others. Those are really difficult.
To become a seafarer, mom, it's like you are a jack of all trades. We are a navigator, we are firefighter, we are janitor, we are chemist, and a whole lot of things. As a second officer, ma'am, I am in charge of uh, passage planning, directing the ship from one place to another. I am also the medical officer on board, in charge of the firefighting equipments, cargo oil transfer, and also, ma'am, the mooring operation. We are also in charge of the mooring operation of making fast the ship from to a port or to another ship.
A tough and noble task, but you know, Maribel, harassment and discrimination do remain serious concerns for women at sea. What did you learn from the training to enable you to uphold a culture of respect and professionalism, especially when you're at sea?
When I was in college, ma'am, we are already trained to in our school on how to act properly, and with the right amount of education you will earn more respect because at sea, whether you're man or woman, the important thing is you know your job and you do it right. Once you do it, you will earn the respect of all the crew regardless of gender. And I am grateful that I have never experienced any harassment and bullying in my time at sea.
Well, that's really good to know, and those are very well said. I wish you safe travels, Maribel, and congratulations for your trailblazing work at sea. Maribel Villar-Singyan, second officer at OSM Tome.
Thank you very much.
From around the globe. In the U.S., former President Joe Biden is diagnosed with an aggressive prostate cancer that has spread through his bones. Biden's office said Friday the former U.S. chief executive experienced urinary symptoms, which led doctors to find a small nodule on his prostate. Among those who offered supportive messages is U.S. President Donald Trump, writing on social media that he and his wife Melania are saddened by Biden's diagnosis and hopeful for his predecessor's recovery. Still in the U.S., 2 crew members are dead after a Mexican Navy training ship crashed into New York City's Brooklyn Bridge Saturday night. Over 270 people were aboard that ship, which was heading to Iceland for a global goodwill tour. According to NYC Mayor Eric Adams and other city officials, the ship was moving in the wrong direction and lost power before drifting directly into the underside of the bridge. At least 22 remain in hospital, 11 of which were in critical condition and 9 in stable condition. The cause of the accident is still under investigation. And in the Vatican, Pope Leo XIV has pledged during his inauguration mass to safeguard the teachings of the Church while facing modern challenges head-on. Leo told the church hierarchy, dignitaries, and over 200,000 faithful gathered at St. Peter's Square that the cardinal electors chose him for his ability to preserve the rich heritage of the Church while looking to the future to confront the concerns of today's world. Luis Antonio Cardinal Tagle presented the Pope with his fisherman's ring, one of the traditional papal regalia. And Austria won the Eurovision Song Contest 2025 in Swiss host city Basel on Saturday, May 17th. Operatic singer JJ, whose name is Johannes Pitsch, is half Austrian and half Filipino. He is Austria's 3rd Eurovision winner. He won ahead of Israel in the world's biggest music competition, watched by over 160 million people across the world. JJ combined elements of opera, techno and high-pitched vocals in his song Wasted Love, which won the hearts of the juries and phone voters. At a post-victory press conference, JJ said the message of his song was that love is the strongest force on planet Earth, and love persevered. He urged people to spread love, adding that he was honored to be the first Eurovision champion with a Filipino heritage, as well as proudly queer winner. We're so proud of you, JJ. Congratulations. That is it for Money Talks. I'm Cathy Yang. Catch us again tomorrow, 9:30 a.m. here on One News. We're also streamed live on YouTube and on our Facebook channels. Have a great day ahead.